Welcome back to my channel. This is Coach DC from All 22 Films. This video is going to be about Kelvin Sheppard's decision-making process, the options that he has, now that, of course, there's so many more variables to consider with the secondary in 2026 in Detroit. Not just Terrion Arnold, a situation that at this point in time obviously looks quite bleak as far as his availability, but also Brian Branch, health concerns with his recovery from the Achilles tear, and then Kerby Joseph as well. I'm going to give you some of my summary thoughts at the end of the video. I like to show film. It's what I rely on, to be honest with you. And in this case, we'll show one play to talk about Terrion Arnold. Unfortunately, there were moments in 2025 where you saw the potential. You saw the ability to make plays or have sticky coverage. In this case, he's lined up to a trip side. Trips means there's 3 receivers. It's against the Cincinnati Bengals, Week 5 win on the road. Arnold was recovering from injury anyway. And so there were some questions about what his availability would look like. And now, obviously, he's not going to be available at all. This is one of the few plays where you see it's very kind of emblematic, if you will, of the situation that he's in right now legally. There's a chance on the field last year to make a play against an elite wide receiver, Jamar Chase, and unable to take advantage, ends up catching the ball, well, neither time that he tried to. I have no idea what the legal situation, what the outcome will be. It certainly looks quite bleak. I'm here to talk about the options with Detroit. As they try to move on, I will give some thoughts on the matter a little bit at the end of the video. Obviously, the one guy that a lot is going to be expected of, and quite honestly should be, is DJ Reed. He only played, I think, 11 or 12 games in 2025. 2 interceptions, 7 PDs. This is one of the picks, the Week 4 win at home against the Cleveland Browns. Press coverage, a one-on-one up here into the boundary. With so many question marks or so many guys unavailable for a limited amount of time or forever, Joseph, Branch, and Arnold, DJ Reed is a known entity, right? You kind of understand what you're going to get out of him. I thought before the injury in 2025, he played quite well. Arnold is obviously on the field down here playing in like a trail man position. Kerby Joseph's availability, whether he's there or not, is a huge determining factor as to what the scheme might look like. Brian Branch as well. Whether it was Aaron Glenn, Kelvin Sheppard calling plays on the defensive side, they relied on a lot of one-high safety looks. And we've heard some discussion. We've heard some points in the offseason from Dan Campbell and from Kelvin Sheppard about whether they're going to morph or move into more too high safety structures. I think they need to be honest with you, even if Kerby Joseph and Brian Branch are there, but certainly if they're not, ways to try to protect and safeguard some of the outside corners that we know will be available right now. From a Reed standpoint, it kind of reminded me initially of a Meek Robertson. The difference is, I think, they're both feisty, competitive, combative, in fact, but a better tackler, I thought. Puts himself in a better position to make tackles. This is a unique example of that. I'm not going to show many plays from each guy. I'm just using this as a platform to kind of jump off and talk about each of the options that are there. There's only so much film to show, but here's a wildcat version of a run play. You've got DeAndre Swift in the backfield. Reed is got his nameplate, above him here at the bottom side of the screen. It's wildcat because Caleb Williams is lined up at the top side, so the possibility of a reverse and then, handing the ball off to the quarterback to throw. Kelvin Sheppard's got a big task ahead, right? The options to deploy, if Brad Holmes doesn't go out and get another corner or even sign a veteran, someone with some stability, someone with reliability as a starter, DJ Reed is one of them. Is he a number 1 corner? I don't really necessarily look at players like that. But in Detroit's system, whether it was Aaron Glenn or Kelvin Sheppard, they oftentimes were playing so much man that you would hope that you could get a number 1 corner out of a first-round pick like Terrion Arnold or a free agent signing like DJ Reed. Rock Ya-Sin obviously had some impressive moments, at least in my observation, in 2025. Not just the A.J. Brown game in Philadelphia. I think Rock showed himself to be very savvy, tough, and smart. It was really his last chance, I think, in 2025 to maybe, be a starter or be a significant contributor. I think he took advantage of it. Maybe in this particular game against the Bucs, I think you got 2 receivers who came into the game less than 100%. Mike Evans was one of them. Still a masterpiece performance, I think, um, by Kelvin Sheppard and the defense as far as the coverage calls and then how those guys went out there and executed. In this case, kind of stacked twins at the bottom side of the screen. Evans on a little bit of a speed out. And Rock does what he does best, I think. Put himself in position to make plays or put himself in position to guard guys and be a deterrent. He's not going to get a high number of interceptions. He's never done that in the NFL. Did play in Baltimore for one season, 2023. I'll talk more about that season. Ideally, Rock would be your third or fourth corner on the outside in a perfect situation. Right now as it stands, not really what we've got from a roster construction standpoint. But he had some really good matchups last year that I'm trying to sell you on. Should make you a little bit emboldened as a Lions fan. Not better than Terrion Arnold, not more talented. I get it, the outside corner criticism is there as far as did Brett Holmes and the front office do enough. But look at the timeline. The incident in Florida occurs with Terrion Arnold and his friends or associates early February. I think late February came to light, maybe the 24th, 26th, somewhere in that range. And once free agency started, Detroit re-signed Rock, I think March 10th, to a one-year contract. And then Christian Azayan and Roger McCreary, in that order, both signed on March 13th. Did they do enough? I don't know, but at least they did address the number of actual NFL-level coverage guys. Rock Ya-Sin, Azayan, and Roger McCreary are that. In this case, Ya-Sin is up at the top side of our screen. Again, you've got his nameplate above his head. I love the Once Sports Analyser program, able to draw stuff, in this case, try to illustrate for you that he's covering the attacking vertical route by Higgins. And what I like about this one, why it shows it to point it out to you, is that he's got no help. And that's the thing that showed up on some of the film for Rock in 2025, is that he oftentimes didn't have help, and he was aware of it. So he would play the route into the space that he was assigned, or where no one else was assigned to help, and he understood where the weakness was. In this case, it's against T. Higgins, tracking the route with no help. He's aware of that. He's a super aware guy, I think 29, maybe 30 years old, so he's a veteran. Certainly not a big name across NFL circles, but a really solid football player. He was a guy that I liked when he signed with the Ravens in 2023. Mike McDonald's second year there. He got outplayed that season, to be honest with you. Marlon Humphrey was injured a lot, often, in 2023, and Brandon Stevens and Ronald Darby both outplayed him, as well as even Arthur Millette, who, of course, showed up in Detroit last year as well. The thing that I do like about DJ Reed and Rock Ya-Sin is veterans with experience and their versatility. Now, I talked about this particular play. It's a 3rd and 4 from the Week 18 win on the road against the Bears. I talked about this in a Jack Campbell video that I did after he was named All-Pro, I believe. In this case, you've got Campbell lined up at basically outside corner at the top of the screen. And then Rock Ya-Sin, I call this a cowboy call in the terminology that I know, where you have both corners on the same side, both outside corners. In this case, Rock Ya-Sin and DJ Reed. Too high safety structure. Campbell out there at corner, really. So we should be talking about him a little bit. But they make this look like a Tampa 2, and this is what I'm going to try to sell you on. I think Sheppard should do a little bit more of, which is give these looks that show man. Why is Campbell up there? What's tight end? There's 12 personnel. There's one tight end up there at the top, a second tight end down here at the bottom. Theoretically, I think that's Derek Barnes, who could cover him. Man, you've got Rock and you've got Reed on the 2 stand-ups, the 2 receivers. All right, so 12 personnel means 1 running back, 2 tight ends, and your 2 outside corners, hence the cowboy call, your 2 outside corners are lined up over the two receivers, the guys that are remaining from that 12 personnel designation. 1 running back, 2 tight ends, 2 receivers is your 5 position players, plus the quarterback and the 5 offensive line equals 11. Show man, play zone. Show zone, play man. Mix it up some. I felt like early in the season, Kelvin Sheppard did a lot of show man, play man. And as things progressed, and of course, as the injuries mounted, Kirby Joseph, Brian Branch, Terrion Arnold as well, teams were able to take advantage. The talent level obviously dipped as well. This is like a Tampa 2. I think Rock is in the right here. I think he's in the right spot. Campbell is playing corner. Basically, him and DJ Reed are mirrored flat defenders. I think that Malcolm Rodriguez and Rock Ya-Sin are in the correct spot, essentially hash defenders. I think that Barnes being stacked over the top of Ya-Sin is the mistake here. I think that Barnes should be in between these two guys, and if it's a Tampa 2, he should be getting more vertical. But it could be wrong. Either way, it's a busted or misshapen version of a cover 2. Like I said, perhaps Tampa. It ends up a sack because Aiden Hutchinson beats the right tackle for the Bears or around the top side and is able to bend back to the quarterback. But this kind of gets to my point. They played so much man in 2025, and even prior to that in 2024. When you did get a zone call, sometimes things didn't work out the way you wanted them to. Guys ended up in the wrong spot. Now, we are talking about Rock Ya-Sin, a backup corner, to be up front. It's possible that he was the mistake. It's possible it was Barnes in the middle. That's not the point. Rock brings versatility as a veteran. It's a 3rd and 4. Sheppard was willing to make that call. Granted, we are in Week 18 at the end of the season. I did think that Sheppard got a little bit more versatile as the season progressed. Now, to be honest with you, that play and a couple that I'm going to show you here in a row, I've already talked about in film study form in the offseason after the 2025 regular season ended and Detroit didn't make the playoffs. This, of course, I'm going to talk about Roger McCreary. I did this video maybe 2.5 weeks ago. I get it. He's projected to play, and he's practicing at the nickel in minicamp, right? Christian Azayan, safety, perhaps nickel as well. With Terrion Arnold, not being around possibly ever again in Detroit, it kind of forces me and maybe others to rethink whether McCreary is going to show up as an outside corner if he's better than Rock Ya-Sin, if he's better than Ennis Rakestraw Jr., who I won't really show film of here. It's all preseason stuff. I talked about this play in the video that I did. This was the NFC division round win, the road win. It's a cover 2. And one of the things that I'm going to offer to you guys is a thought process that I've gone through before as a coach and then trying to analyze the game with the Ravens is you have some corners that are better in man, rock, and some that are better in zone. I think McCreary is more of a zone corner. I might be wrong there. And so if you've got quality guys who are right around the same level, whatever you would rate them as, on a Madden rating scale, maybe they all need to be used if you're not going to go out and acquire anyone else. So there's a high-low element here. Tight end in the flats, DJ Moore on kind of like this post-corner route, flag, if you will. And playing 2 safeties allows or kind of protects those guys a little bit more, if you ask me. So what I'm talking about is cover 2, whether it's cover 2 to this side and cover 2 to the other, or, because you actually do have an OLB chasing this tight end out in the flat. So, call it whatever you want. The point is you've got a 2-high safety structure. Half-field defender is what's inside that blue box right there. And his width, being closer to the sideline, is what allows him to arrive here just as or perhaps after the ball does. Essentially, that 2-high safety look can more evenly disperse or cut the field into smaller sections, if you will, from a horizontal standpoint. And if you've got to go with Thomas Harper, Christian Azayan, Chuck Clark, those type of guys instead of Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch, obviously you want to help those guys out by maybe asking them to cover less ground. The reason why I bring up some type of rotation or different utilization of the corners playing to their strengths, if you accept that McCreary is a zone corner, if I am correct in that observation, and then Rock is more of a man guy, some type of rotation that utilizes both of them. I have some experience observing that. The 2023 Ravens under Mike Macdonald, his second and last year there as a defensive coordinator, they didn't retain Marcus Peters. Marlon Humphrey got hurt in camp, kind of late. In fact, I have a little bit more to say about that later. The point is they utilized a rotation of guys and kind of played to their strengths. I'm not saying that McCreary didn't play any man at all. Again, he's down here at the bottom side of the screen. He's going to play man. He's matched up here against Rome Odunze. But versatility is the key. Versatility, for the player individually, but also versatility with the guys that are on your roster, people that can do different things. You obviously have a 2-high safety structure. Kind of protects these guys here. Ends up being a completion to the bottom side of the screen. Again, it's a 2-high safety look. Does Kelvin Sheppard, does Dan Campbell actually want to be in those things a lot? I don't know. But I do think there's lessons to learn from the Seattle Seahawks and what they did in 2025 and even what Mike Macdonald's defense has been able to do dating back to his time at Michigan, and that's present as wide a coverage umbrella as possible pre-snap, meaning don't show man from a one-high look and play man from a one-high look. Now, if you have Kirby Joseph around, clearly, and he's healthy, he's a huge deterrent in that role as the middle of the field free safety. He's an elite football player, similar to Brian Branch in that they're both elite, about as good as it gets as a tandem if they're both around and healthy. But right now, we don't know what that will look like with Kirby Joseph, and with another talented guy out in Terrion Arnold. I think you got to play to these guys' strengths. McCreary, Rock Ya-Sin, Ennis Rakestraw Jr., depending on how far he gets during the season. Keith Abney, who I thought was a great pick in the fifth round. Not having a Kirby Joseph back there, to me, means there might need to be a faster schematic shift or movement than maybe Kelvin Sheppard was planning going into camp. One more opportunity here to talk about McCreary, and again, I recognize that I covered these plays in a separate film study video about him, so this allowed me to kind of get this out quicker, this film study out quicker. It didn't take me 2 or 3 days to formulate my thoughts here and try to line that up with the film. Something I noticed about McCreary, he's spot shadowed up at the top, kind of cut off a little bit, the 12 o'clock position. He's very aware. He's a willing tackler. I think he gets guys to the ground. Not huge hits, but this is not huge impact. This is a 2nd and goal from the 19. It's a screen to the top side, into the boundary, okay? This is the short side of the field. The boundary up here. The wide side is down to the bottom, or the field side, if you will. The NFL hashes are pretty close, but you can still refer to it as field and boundary. He makes the tackle. McCreary makes the tackle on Kenneth Walker. He tackled him 3 times in this game. Kenneth Walker's a load, right, to make the tackle. It's a fake screen to JSN down here at the bottom. So off the snap, you're going to see Sam Darnold look down here, a slight fake, JSN raise his hands up as if he's going to get the football. Try to focus on McCreary now. Eyes in on the quarterback, looking in as well. He's got a half-field safety to support him. This is kind of what I'm advocating for if and when McCreary's on the field. And he's at outside corner, and he identifies the screen now. Plays really well in this role, if you ask me. Uses his eyes well, reacts appropriately, and then he's willing to get in on the tackle. Again, it's Kenneth Walker, the third, who's since signed with the Chiefs, unfortunately, but a superstar talent with the football in his hands, Kenneth Walker. And McCreary tackled him 3 times in this game. Of course, the Seahawks won the NFC Championship and then eventually took the Super Bowl from the Patriots. I thought McCreary was a B-plus signing at the time. Maybe some reliability questions, how much time he's missed. But look, if you rewind back to March of 2025, I think Rock signed on March 20th of 2025. Rock Ya-Sin signing under the radar, right? And he ended up playing a pretty big role in 2025. It didn't end up in a playoff trip for the Lions. They certainly didn't go as far as we all thought they could have or maybe should have. But I think you've got a similar dynamic here. A quality player who's good at certain things, has relative strengths and weaknesses, and if Kelvin Sheppard and Dan Campbell and those guys are going to widen their coverage umbrella up some, then McCreary can play a bigger role, whether that's as the nickel or an outside corner. The last guy that I'll talk about, or I should say the last guy that I'll show some film of, Nick Whiteside. Not to neglect Christian Azayan. I just don't have the film developed of him yet, meaning I haven't run it through the Once Sports Analyser program and edited or annotated the film, which makes it safe for me to use and hopefully a little bit more enjoyable for you guys to look at. This was an impressive game by him in Week 7. He only played 51 snaps in all of 2025. 40 of them were in this game. I don't even think he played a single snap on defense in the first half. Didn't show up until the third quarter. Long, I think 6'1", maybe 6'1 3/4, 200 pounds. I don't necessarily think he's a man corner, even though he does play man here. I think he becomes more of a man corner in the red zone with more space to cover. He's just not a burner from the film that I've seen. I think his zone reactions look solid. In any case, this is a 2-point conversion play matched up against Cade Otton into the boundary. All right, the short side of the field. And first, Baker Mayfield's looking to the field, the wide side. You've got a pretty predictable scheme from the Bucs here because they're presuming, and they're correct, that it's man. Now, you get 2 additional hats or players focusing to the trip side. So it ends up looking like 5 over 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Lions defenders over these 3 receivers. So what the Bucks are doing, since Detroit's showing man and playing man, is they're just trying to pick the outside coverage guy. So Tez Johnson going to go run a pick and then allow this guy to run underneath. Baker Mayfield, I guess, sees Jack Campbell and Harper both react to this and doesn't want to try to stick this throw in here to number 17. It certainly doesn't look like it's there to me. Like I said, it looks like 5/3. We're focusing on, or we should be focusing on, Whiteside and man on Otten up top. Really nice play, man. It gives you an idea of his tenacity, his competitive streak. Excellent college football player. Forgive me that it's, blurry here. It's because of the magnification. If Whiteside is your fifth, sixth corner, you got a pretty good group, right? But a lot of people would say, well, we need a number 1. And I wouldn't have a problem with that if they went out and got a Denzel Ward or figured out a way to get someone else who would immediately upgrade the room and also help out with the, help out the safety situation. Basically, this is a good talent, Whiteside, for the position he's at, 5th or 6th in the ranking, to provide depth in case other guys get injured. One last look at Whiteside from a play that I actually remember doing a film study video on, or this was a part of a larger study about what Kelvin Sheppard'S defense pulled off. Like I said, he only played 51 snaps all year, he being Nick Whiteside. 40 of them were in this game. I know that, Evans and Egbuka, their health coming into the game, played a factor. Don't get me wrong. I don't know that either one of those guys was 100%. This is a 3rd and 4. And again, a well-supported defensive call. It's actually cover 2 man. It's a 2 high safety look, but they're not playing zone. Baker sees the matchup down here at the bottom, and that's Egbuka against Whiteside, and so that's where he decides to go. For whatever reason, Harper's kind of sitting down here. This could be a rat call. So basically, he's looking for some type of route to rob or take over, help out with, in cut from that bunch alignment. They put the bunch into the boundary. In any case, it's an out and up from Egbuka. You can see he's looking back briefly, and that holds Whiteside just enough for Egbuka to gain some separation on this vertical up the field. From a technique standpoint, quality of plays over time, Whiteside doesn't stack up, right, to Rock Ya-Sin or DJ Reed at all. But, he has the ability to get on the field and get his hands on the football. This is not only going to display his range. You can see that Egbuka is starting to separate a little bit here, but Whiteside is able to get a hand on the football. There's also a safety converging. It's Harper. That happened because of his alignment. Harper does kind of step down and in towards the hash, but it's a 2 high safety structure. If Harper was in here in the middle of the field, no way he gets here at all to try to play a factor or be a factor in this play. I think it probably goes down as a drop, but the ball is tipped by Whiteside, in my opinion. I would just call it a pass defensed. I think the large point for me is that there'll have to be some adjustments made if they can't acquire another starting caliber corner, legit starting caliber corner like a Denzel Ward, like I said, or a safety who's going to be a serious upgrade over what they have available right now if Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph, are not around at all for 2026. I'm going to give you some of my thoughts about the whole situation. First, I'm not really into speculating about the case as far as Terrion Arnold goes. As a coach who has tried to help student athletes get some opportunities beyond high school, whether that was college football, just getting into college, whether it was some post-graduation job, to see someone that young possibly waste an even greater opportunity, I mean financially, right, than just college football, it kind of caused and causes like a pit in my stomach. I've just seen so many young men generally waste a big chance to improve their life. And so to some extent, part of my reaction is remembering some of those guys who didn't get even close to their stated goal. And so from a Terrion Arnold standpoint, even though the details are quite gory and certainly, don't paint a rosy picture at all, it makes it difficult for me to not have a reaction that is somewhat protective of young people like that maybe I've been around or seen, fall under some of the same fall and make some of the same mistakes as he possibly did here. In any case, for the options that are available, right, is the overall talent level good enough? I have in the secondary right now that what's available. I have a wide net of reactions or thoughts for you. Okay, I want to prep you for that. Obviously, if you try to answer is the ceiling of the whole group A or A plus level on paper, no, it's not even close, right? Even though I like all of these guys individually, and some of the film that I talked about was just meant to be a primer or a platform. Look, I like DJ Reed, Rock Ya-Sin, Roger McCreary, probably more of a nickel, it sounds like, but I've seen less film there. Most of the film I've seen is outside corner. Nick Whiteside, I talked about Keith Abney, even though I didn't show any film of him. I really liked his college film out of Arizona State. Ennis Rakestraw Jr. hopefully could possibly get an opportunity. I mean, this changes things for him. How many snaps is he going to play in the preseason? Do they want to take a look at him? Christian Azayan, I have film that's just not prepped. Where is the number one corner? There isn't one, right? Terrion Arnold wasn't one either. And I think I said that earlier, but I'm not really someone who thinks of things in that way. And this is where I'm going to merge into or shift it a little bit. Different systems deploy their corners, field and boundary. Some teams go left and right. You have a left side corner and a right side corner. Is what the Ravens used to do with Marcus Peters and Marlon Humphrey. Some teams are matchup based. You go to this receiver and I go to the other one. So we may end up field and boundary. We may end up right and left, depending on that matchup. The Lions have been so man-centric, almost over-reliant, in some instances as far as how often they play man. And I said this in 2024 as well, even though it was, very beneficial, getting the home field advantage in NFC playoffs, obviously. Think about the Week 18 win over the Vikings in 2024, right? Destruction of Sam Darnold and the Vikings offense. But then on the other, so obviously very beneficial. At some points in time, though, and I'm thinking of, I believe it was 2023, a 3rd and long in Dallas. The Dallas Cowboys are backed up to like their own 3-yard line, somewhere in that range. And Derek Barnes on a blitz has an opportunity to hit Dak Prescott, to sack him. Isn't able to take him down. I believe Dak Prescott completes it up top to CeeDee Lamb. I think it goes to the house, but I could be wrong there. My memory might be faulty here, but the concept is not. My memory of the concept was not. I think it's a 3rd and 16, 3rd and 14, and Aaron Glenn is bringing a ton of pressure and playing basically cover 0. Why? I feel like sometimes Glenn and even Kelvin Sheppard dialed up the man pressure schemes too much. Some of that is trying to get pressure on the quarterback. It was beneficial at times, like I said, with the Vikings situation in Week 18 of 2024. When the talent level dropped in 2024, as far as the coverage guys available, and unfortunately occurred again in 2025, there needed to be more tactical concessions, if you ask me, in a different type of mentality. And I think that's what we've got now. That's where we are now, unfortunately, before the 2026 season even starts, right? The question mark as far as Kirby Joseph, knowing that Brian Branch is not going to be around for a while, probably until late in the season, and Terrion Arnold, may not see him ever again in a Detroit Lions uniform. I've said this before, and I know some of you guys didn't like it, and that's fine. Kelvin Sheppard and Dan Campbell need to have a more multiple system. That looks like it, in my opinion, would help. There's no one size, one coverage, one defense, one scheme that fits every situation. It's really about finding or calling, I guess, the right one, the right look, the right coverage, the right stunt for each situation. Or making the right call as much as you possibly can, as much as the defensive coordinator can. Kelvin Sheppard did, I think, become more multiple, as less predictable is perhaps a better way to describe it, as the 2025 season progressed. You've now lost 3 potential starters for at least a period of time. But on the other side of the coin, the Week 7 win against the Bucs, the one that I chronicled and talked about a little bit here, so many guys were out, right? and it was a virtuoso performance. That's the same Bucks team that I think had went to Seattle 3 weeks earlier and scored 38 points in a 38-35 win. I guess what I'm really saying is, if you want to play a ton of man, Kelvin Sheppard, Dan Campbell, or if you as a fan are advocating for that, first of all, having Kirby Joseph back there as a free safety in the middle of the field is a huge deterrent, right? He's a special talent. The production and the output has been amazing. I think you guys know what I think of that safety combo. I kind of alluded to it earlier. But personally, the reality is you may or may not have Kirby Joseph around for much or all of 2026. Right now, you don't have the type of talent available to just show man from a one-high look and then play man and stop, the best quarterback, wide receiver, tight end combos that are out there in the NFL. To do that consistently, you have to be a little bit more multiple. There has to be more obfuscation, disguise, whatever word you want to say. If Branch and Joseph were totally healthy, that would help in that regard. It would help if you wanted the simplistic one-high look, one-high safety structure, man reliant scheme that Aaron Glenn and Kelvin Sheppard both utilized a lot in the last couple of years. Here at the end, if you stuck around to hear my thoughts, am I trying to be super optimistic? Am I trying to be pessimistic, or am I pessimistic? A little bit of both. I will leave you with some optimism, and I'm going to give you a try to relate it to the Ravens in 2023. Now, you may chuckle or scoff at that comparison, given how ridiculous that defense ended up being. Historic, in fact, right? It was Mike Macdonald's second year in Baltimore. But it's gonna be difficult for you to do this. I remember the dates because I did videos on these occurrences. Number one, and number two, I remember the perspective or the thoughts that many Ravens fans had, because I can go back and look at the comments on my videos. So rewind a little bit, and I'll actually link this up at some point during the video. August 16th of 2023, Marlon Humphrey was coming off like a borderline Pro Bowl season in 2022. If it weren't for like 3 plays in 2022, he would have been Pro Bowl. Gave up one long touchdown, I think, against the Patriots early in 2022, and then another one against the Browns, I think week 8 or week 9. But in any case, 23, McDonald's second year, Humphrey gets injured in camp. It was close to the season starting. I think it was August 15th practice or maybe the 16th. My video came out on the 16th. My video was titled, How the Ravens Defense Can Survive Without Marlon Humphrey. We didn't re-sign Marcus Peters. He had the ACL injury and changed his game a lot, unfortunately. This is a different situation, I get it. Terrion Arnold possibly committed a crime and has got himself in trouble, allegedly, versus Marlon Humphrey getting injured in camp. In addition, the talent level is not close between those guys. It's just not close, right? You got a 2-time All-Pro guy in Humphrey, I think 4-time Pro Bowler, versus a guy, Terrion Arnold, who didn't even have a starting spot guaranteed to him as of a week ago. But some other factors that I think we can bring up here for my memory and the way that I'm relating this. Look, Jadeveon Clowney didn't sign with the Ravens until 2 days later, August 18th, 2023. He had a badass 23 season in Baltimore, right? Kyle Van Noy didn't sign till like week 3 or week 4. Our corners, our starting corners, were going to be Rock Ya-Sin and Brandon Stevens. That's right, in 2023. Ronald Darby ended up outplaying Rock Ya-Sin. And Mike Macdonald and the defensive staff had a huge impact. Clowney and Van Noy go off, right? They combined for like, I think, 21 and a half sacks, something like that. Matabike, whose previous high for sacks was 5.5, he has 13.5. What I'm saying is, even though this is June and the Terrion Arnold, Marlon Humphrey comparison doesn't work at all for multiple reasons, Kelvin Sheppard hasn't proven to be anything like Mike Macdonald yet. The defensive coaches are the ones that can make this happen, as well as Brad Holmes, right? If he acquires, some fantastic talent like a Denzel Ward or something like that, somebody to supplement. I don't know who that person is. It's not Marlon Humphrey. I don't see the Ravens being able to afford to trade him, even though he had a disappointing 2025, like everybody in Baltimore on the defensive side. I guess what I'm saying is, don't lose faith that you have coaches who, with some adaptation, some evolution, maybe some rotations of guys, they can protect your coverage element, the corners, the safeties. It's not just about man matchups. So many people look at the game simplistically. Approach it mentally for a moment from a Seahawks perspective, or the Ravens 2023. Granted, our safety situation wasn't so dire that year. I get it. But Seattle plays so much of everything, man, zone, combo coverages, pattern read, that they're able to adapt and adjust when guys go out. Julian Love missed a significant amount of time in 2025. So did Devin Witherspoon. Josh Jobe actually took the starting job from Reek Woolen, who since signed a one-year contract with the Eagles. But Josh Jobe took his spot as the boundary side corner. The only thing that kept Woolen on the field a ton was the fact that Witherspoon got hurt. And so my point is, you adapt and you adjust with the players that are out there if you're a really good or perhaps a great coach. Get the right guys on the field in the right coverages. Does that mathematical equation get more difficult for Sheppard without Branch and Joseph and Arnold? Sure, right? It does. I do wonder if Dan Campbell and Sheppard have been prepping for this, if they knew something and had already planned for it. Some of the tone of Campbell's comments was there to kind of see, especially in light of what we know now. I do like the group they have at outside corner and nickel. Is it an A-plus talent level? No. Right now, I would say B-minus talent level. Individually, collectively, it could be better depending on their deployment, depending on their usage, and the availability of Branch and Kirby Joseph, right? That's a huge factor. It might force an evolution, though, Branch and Joseph not being there. It might force a more conservative style, too high safety structure, without those two guys, without those two safeties. There's a huge ability to impact the game for both of those guys. It could also necessitate a trade for Brad Holmes overall. You guys will have to let me know, who do you have the most confidence in of the group that I talked about? Coverage aspect, not the safeties. I'm talking about DJ Reed, Rock Ya-Sin, Ennis Rakestraw, who, I really didn't talk about a whole lot. Roger McCreary, Christian Nazayan, Keith Abney, Whiteside. Can't show film of Abney, obviously. Don't have much film of Ennis Rakestraw Jr. And then, as well as which of those guys do you have the most confidence in? I think the answer is obviously probably DJ Reed. But where are you as far as the, Rock Ya-Sin, Roger McCreary, Christian Azayan, Ennis Rakestraw Jr. competition? Because that certainly seems like what we've got for the other outside corner, unless McCreary does end up staying at nickel. In addition, what do you think Sheppard's tactical moves should be if the personnel stays the same, heading into camp and then a regular season? What do you think Sheppard's tactical moves should be? You might disagree with me. Do you think it should be more multiple, more too high presentations pre-snap that could morph into, one high post-snap, or more one high presentations that go too high post-snap? Essentially, be more multiple, disguise things a little bit more often. You got to, teach that in camp. And the players have to understand the timing of when to do that. That's another hidden element or hidden genius of the way Mike McDonald teaches things in Seattle, is that those guys shift and move so late that quarterbacks really end up confused for the first 1.8 or 2.2 seconds after the snap. And then finally, do you think Kelvin Sheppard actually will make tactical adjustments? Not should he, but do you think him and Dan Campbell will move away from a one high safety structure without Kirby Joseph as a middle of the field free safety, without Brian Branch as a guy to cover tight ends or slot receivers or, blitz like a bat out of hell? Really, I think you'd be setting up this group of corners for some exposure and possibly long-term failure if you stayed with that heavily man-centric look that was what I call or refer to as showman, playman. I feel like there's too many good teams on this, even on this, weekend schedule, that could take advantage of things if the presentation was that simple. In any case, you guys let me know what you think of the video in the comment section. Tried to utilize film to parlay that into my thoughts about the whole dynamic and the whole situation, because I like showing film, to be honest with you. I feel like the film tells the truth about players, but of course I get to pick and choose the plays that I show you, the snaps that I show you, and in this case tried to show you ones that were complimentary about the guys that I was advocating for Kelvin Sheppard to possibly use in a particular role. Finally, if you think other Lions fans would enjoy this film study / commentary of the Lions secondary group as it stands right now in late June, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.